Hello and welcome. This is ForgoTV. I am Forgo. Today we're going to do some Blender stuff. So let's get started. Let me go ahead and switch this over. So we've got Blender 3D. I did a video on kind of a primer of what Blender is, what the asset browser is, which is what we're using. And it was kind of in preparation for this kind of video. But what I'm going to do is we'll jump kind of in. This is a file that I've got for my house, which started as, it's named Garage because it started as my garage, and I've got all kinds of stuff that I've added to it. But I've used it, what I really like using Blender for is using it to visualize what I'm going to do, if things fit, how to arrange things, how to move things around. On more detailed plans, I might have like siding where all the boards are accurate and dimensionally perfect where they need to be, so I can calculate exactly how many boards I need to get for material lists, that kind of thing. So it really is kind of handy in that regard. And just to give you an overview, this is my garage. When I first got here, I didn't have the CNC machine, which you saw in the beginning there in that video. I didn't have the CNC machine when I moved in here, so I built it, had to plan for it, had to plan where the dust collection would go, which is like these tubes here. I had to plan how I was going to do the electrical. And this was really helpful in doing that without having to, because this is a very heavy machine and I don't want to move it ever once it's all dialed in. And so it helps me at least. I mean, I know there's other programs you can, do little, even Microsoft Paint, you could probably do a similar type of thing. But I like doing it with Blender. For one, it reinforces my skills with Blender so that I can make cooler stuff as I go along and add textures. This started really basic. In that video that I did, the primer, we did 2 versions of walls. You can kind of see these walls are just basic walls. There's no 2x4s within them, to whereas over here you can see all the 2x4s in this structure over here. So there's ways you could do it, and it doesn't have to be exactly perfect or anything like that. As you can see, these are just basic walls to give me an idea of room dimensions, so that I can fit things together. Same thing like the Cybertruck. Before I got it, I wasn't sure if it would fit. It's a very tight fit, but it did help me to make sure, okay, it will actually fit in there before I went and bought it. And it's also handy too, because like this trailer, there's some tools, all my tools are on wheels. I could roll these into my trailer as a mobile workshop. So it kind of helps me visualize, okay, well, if this is my bandsaw, where would my bandsaw fit in there? That kind of thing. So really handy. I like using it. There's a lot of features here you'll see that we won't be using. There's just so much you could do with the software. Like this chain link fence is actually like it's actually like a geometry node, which is kind of like a half chromat. It's like programming. It's like programming with objects in a way, because you can kind of see here. Here's what all of this is. What makes this chain link fence, and basically it's just a way of making lines intersect with each other to where it's the fence and then the posts, and how the posts in the line and how far apart, all that kind of stuff. There's really cool stuff because you can make these chain links bigger. You can make the posts bigger, all with just variables that you change within this thing. But we're not going to be using those features, but just to show you that there's a lot of different things you can do. So the whole reason I'm here is I'm trying to do like a video series on how I work with Blender, and then how I transform it into carvings, and then how I put it together into just random furniture. I have a condo, for example. I redid the entire kitchen. I did it all in Blender first, just to see how it would all look, how it all fit, and it turned out pretty good. I've got some tenants in there; they really love it. It's a much more sturdy cabinetry than what was there before, so it's an upgrade. And it was a really fun project to do because the CNC machine is kind of new to me, but I do know my way around 3D modeling. I did, way back in the day, originally got certified in as a CAD draftsman, and even back in the day when we used mechanical tables to do blueprints and stuff. So I was trained in some of that stuff way early on in my life. So I've always been pretty good with the 3D modeling world and familiarizing myself, which is kind of why I thought, yeah, maybe I'll try these videos. People telling me I'm pretty good at explaining things. Other people tell me I explain too much and not very good at it. So I'm here trying. But anyway, so this is my living room. The reason we're here is I've got these, you see this on the side there, I've got that little storage container. I've got a ton of these little storage containers. But I've got them kind of strewed out all over the place because the machine's in there, because the Cybertruck's in there, because all my other tools are in there. I don't have a whole lot of other storage. So I've kind of migrated it into the living room. And my daughter tells me that having tools in your living room is not a normal thing. This is kind of new to me because it works out. I don't know. I like it. It works out. It's functional to me. She's probably right in that it's not normal, but it works. And ultimately, where we're at is I want to get a dog. My dog passed away a couple years ago before all this stuff migrated into this room, and I was thinking about getting another dog. And I was talking to my daughter about it. And it's kind of funny how we start out in life and we get permission from our parents to do stuff. And then we get, a little older and we got to get permission from our teachers to do stuff. And then we find somebody and we get married and we got to get permission from our wife. And then that doesn't work out. And then you have to get permission from your judge to do, to be a parent. And then once your kids are all that bullshit's over, your kids grow up. And then you're like, I want to get a dog. And then the kid's like, no, you got to clean the living room. So I got to get permission now from my child to get a dog. So this is where we're at. I need to move this off the floor so I can get a dog. And that's what we're going to design. I have this rock wall kind of thing that is... Let me pull this out here. I've got this rock wall over here that is the fireplace, basically. So just to kind of give you an idea, just roughly what we're looking at here is that this is basically one big wall. It's a little different than that, but you get the point. So it's basically a rock wall. There's a fireplace here. This is a rock ledge. So if you need to see it visualized, the rock ledge pops out, and there's like a little shelf there. So that's what we've got for what we're working with. There's windows across this wall here, so there's not a whole lot of space. So I've basically got these two corners. This house, when they originally built it, it's one of those houses where they don't have light. They didn't have lights in any of the rooms. They expected people to have lamps and floor lamps and things like that. So I think that's kind of what these corners were originally kind of left blank for, is that they expected you to have a floor lamp in the corner. But I've gone through and I've redone all the electrical to where I've got lights hooked to switches for all my rooms now. So these corners are kind of bare. They're just kind of barren. There's nothing too special. They got like a rock wall behind them, but it's just kind of like a corner. So I'm thinking that we would start taking these and start stacking them up somehow along here. for one unit to get 3 of these out of the way, 3 or 4. See how many we can get. So I want to build a rack that can allow for multiple of these stacked. And, you know, if we can do 4, maybe we can do 4. I don't know if that'll be too high. I'll have to look at it again. But that's kind of the idea. And maybe we'll have a panel on the side. And I don't know. I don't use this software for the CNC machine carvings, or like if we do kind of like a lattice panel with the CNC machine, I wouldn't do any of that stuff here. It would be in the other software. So I'm just trying to get the dimensions right and trying to get materials and kind of like how I want to construct it as I go, just to make it a lot easier as we go. So to start with that, we went through the object browser on that other video, and if you want to go through it, it's about 20 minutes where I go through what Blender is, how to move around, what these different windows are, and we added like a 2x4. We made just a basic 2x4 and we added it in so that we could drag it and pull it out, and now we can use it in this file. We're not using a 2x4 for this right here, but that's how you would do that. And what I've done is I've done all these 1x2s, 2x2, 2x4, 2x6. You know, I've got dimensional lumber. I've got different sheets, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. And so these are my basic building blocks that I'm using. And so the idea that I have is that if we're going to be going up vertical, that we probably want 1x2s as the posts. So we'll bring in a 1x2. If we're sliding stuff in from the front, we probably don't want the face of this board. You know, we want this to be the skinny side on that. So we'll rotate this at Z90, and we'll kind of pull that back that way. Now, one thing I do know that I want is I do want to have some kind of side. I don't have to do anything with it, but I do want to have like a void, like a space between the unit that I'm building and the wall. And then that way I could put pipes or posts or long objects, you know, maybe brooms or something along the long side of that wall to where it's hidden, it's out of view, but it's still some kind of functional space for really tall things that I don't have to like lay up against the wall that everybody can see. So I do want to move this over a little bit. So instead of it being up straight up against the wall, I do want to move this over a little bit. And let's say it is against the wall. If we want to move something over and say we want to move this over to the Y is the green, and we want to move it and give ourselves an 8-inch gap, then we can go on this Y here, and since we're in the negative, we can go -8, or no. I went backwards. Yeah, so anyway, we can go here and we can add it. So if we add 8, wait a minute. If we do plus the number, then it'll add that much. And sometimes it's reversed, so sometimes you'll have to do a negative number, and we'll run across that, I'm sure. So this moved it over 8 inches, basically, from the wall. So this gives us an idea of where we want this rail to be. And I use the 3D just because I'm used to it, and because there's walls and things like that, there's things that we have to look around. If we wanted to do this separately and just start designing this thing off to the side, it's a lot easier, or in a different file entirely. It's a lot easier to be able to like use your front, because if like I use this view, it comes all the way out to the front of the project, and then I have to see through everything. The top view is okay because we don't have anything that's interfering with our top view. But anything that we have on these sides without having to zoom in all the way, it's just kind of awkward to use. So I've gotten used to looking around and manipulating things this way. But if we go to the top view, we can move this board. Shift middle mouse is your kind of slide the camera around to wherever you want it. So if this is the edge of our thing and we want this to be right up against it. Now we also want to bring this back 5 inches. So this is where we'll go negative ½ inch. I'm sorry, not 5 inches. So we want to go back a ½ inch just to give it a gap to slide around a little bit. Or maybe we don't want to go ½ inch. Maybe we want to go, since we already went, I'll add another 1/4 inch. So we give ourselves a 1/4 inch tolerance, basically, between these two rails. So we've got that rail there. We can go over here. We can look at this. We can scale. We can shift middle mouse button to move this around. We can line this up just generally here. I mean, it's when you're scaled in at this level, the differences aren't too much on. You know, it's like 0.677 of an inch. You know, we're not going to be making things to that accuracy level. But we want to do the same thing here, so we want to add plus 0.25, and then that moves it out. So that gives us a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a play on the sides there. So we've got these two panels here. We know that roughly this is going to go not straight up against the wall. There's going to be a little bit of a gap. And yeah, we've got something that looks like this. And maybe we want to bring these out just a little bit to give us some room for some face paneling. Plus we're going to have some rails. So this is kind of the general idea of what where we're going to be at with this. So let's go ahead and copy these, Shift D, and we can pull them back. We don't want these all the way against the wall. We want to have a little bit of a gap here. The cool thing is that if we have this wall and it's all jagged, it's not actually like that in real life. It's actually more pulled in. But the cool thing about this is that there's a profile here of all these different rocks. With the CNC machine, I can actually, if I scribe it right, I can get a perfect cut along there, as long as I transcribe that scribe into a digital format. But it's kind of neat how we could actually butt it, like if we want to put a panel up against there. I guess let's do that just to visualize where we're at. So let's start with a ½ inch piece of plywood, and we'll rotate Y 90, and then we'll rotate Z 90, and then we'll make this 32. I think it's around 32 that we want. So we could skin it. And like I say, I'm not going to do any of the design work on if we do any kind of like CNC intricate carving or panel or lattice or anything like that. But this kind of gives us a rough idea of what it might look if it has a full panel there. And like I say, when I'm talking about the scribing, is that you can scribe this, whatever this texture is over here. And if you put it into a digital format in the other software, I can make that edge match perfectly to that scribe, which is kind of neat. So maybe we want to do that if we use a full panel. The other possibility would be if we make this, well, let's see what we're going to do. I don't know what these are going to be, but maybe we have a bunch of different panels instead. So you can kind of see, you can kind of get an idea. And so you can see here, I've got my scene. There's one thing I didn't really explain at all in the other video. I've got my scene divided out into these collections. And this is easy. This is done so that you can turn things on and off, mostly just to help organize, so that I can kind of separate things out and and do things that way. I've got all my vehicles, I can turn it on and off. My tools, I can turn it on and off. Some of these things are in different groups as I've gotten it and just hasn't been organized, but they're really nice to have. So we'll start a new collection for our rack. So we'll call it container rack. And then we'll take all of these pieces of wood that we've just added into our. Wait a minute, what did I just do there? We take all these pieces of wood and we add it into our container rack. Now we can turn it on and off. And then the other part about it is since this is all in the one group, it's a lot easier to find in case we want to find these two side pieces we just made or this one big piece we made to turn them on and off. So we say, oh, I wonder what it looks like with the panel. Turn that panel on. Yeah, kind of like that. What about if they're different boards? And we have these different boards. And we'll go over that more as we build stuff, but collections are very handy to do things like this anyway. So we've got our container rack here. We've got our 4 posts, and they're generally covering what this large container is, which this is to scale. It's one of the large container deals. So the idea is that these would slide in. And in order to slide in, they actually have like a lip on them, which is ideal because we can take a 1x2. We can rotate it on the Y by 90, and then we can scale this down to 22 inches. Or what did I say? 30 inches? I forget what I said before. Might have been 32. Nope, 30. I think it is 30. So we do this and we go to the 7 is our top view, and we can line this up next to our board. And this is basically what our rail would be. So we need to determine how we want this to go. And this one of the things I really love about this software is, let's say we take one of these and we rotate it so that we've got a shelf. Now we might want to do we might want to have shelving in here as an option. Like instead of having it just a bunch of these things, you know, it could be that we have it on that we have the sides covered. It could be that it's an open skeleton. It could be that we put doors on the front of it. It could be that it's open. But this is where I start. This is where I start brainstorming, kind of how I want it to be. And maybe I don't want this always to be for storage containers, since it's a living room. So we could make shelving, and we could start putting, we've got a shelf here. Let's say that there's a little bit of a gap. If we do hang these, so we can line this up with our lid. And then we move this over, copy that, move it over. And it looks like we might need to now I'm going to want to have to verify my the width on that to make sure. I think I did when I did these to where it's actually right up here for that reason, for that lip. So if this is actually right, what we're going to want to do is we're going to move these over just a hair, just so that it catches the lip, but it's not actually rubbing against it, because I'm pretty sure I did that to where it's accurate at that, right at that corner. I'll have to verify it, but I'm pretty sure that's how I design it. So yeah, we've got a little bit of a change on that. But this is the general idea of we've got a shelf and we've got, and maybe this shelf goes back to even that out. And maybe we want to have a 1x2. And you can see some of these I can, some of these you can drag these in or you just copy paste. It kind of depends on how you want to do it. Sometimes I drag them in, sometimes I copy paste just because it's easier. If it's a board, I know that I'm kind of working with some of the right stuff. So this is a 2x. So let's make it a 4-inch. Maybe we want a 2-inch. So the idea is that we have a lip there, or like one for strength, and then 2 for if we have doors that go across here. And the other part is that we could start thinking about our joinery. You can do lap joints to where it's like half of this would be cut out and then half of that would be cut out, and then they slide in together to make a thing. We could have it to where they butt against each other on the inside here, and then there's like a bracket. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't need to be concerned about it with now, because generally if we're making all of our parts, if we're just looking for sizing and materials at this point, we'll just oversize them and make them as if they're going to go all the way across the front. And then that way, when we do our material list, we can always shorten them, but you want to kind of like make sure that you over assume whatever you're going to do. So yeah, so we've got a 1x2. We wouldn't want a 1x2 across there because that would block our thing, right? And then, so we're going to want to bring, for our next level, we're going to bring a 1x2, but where do we want to bring that? The idea that I have is that we might want to peek into these lids. So we might want to like lift the lid and look in. And if we're doing that, we probably want 4 inches to kind of like peek through. So we can kind of just guesstimate where it's going to be. It doesn't have to be exact because there's going to be a little bit of a gap anyway. But we could take this and we could say y plus, not y, z plus 4. So then we've got, like, if we pull this out a little bit and then we lift the lid and we peek inside, say, oh no, my stuff's not in there. I'll put that back. They've got labels on them anyway, but maybe you want to double check, okay, maybe if this is a paint one and that's a paint one, because that's how I organize my stuff, is I have all my paint stuff in a paint container and all my woodworking stuff and plumbing and electrical, and so maybe I have a couple of different plumbing containers and I just want to be able to look in. So I'm thinking I want a gap up there for that purpose, because otherwise if we did it like this, you could pull it out, but you're not going to be able to lift that lid. So I want to give myself 4 inches just because I could pull it out and lift and kind of see something. And we're not giving up too much space that way. So I like that idea. And like I said, we don't need to worry about the joinery too much. On the shelving, I probably would go with angle brackets here, but maybe we could cut into it. These are only 1x2s, so I don't really want to sacrifice the strength of a 1x2. If it was a 2x4, there's more you could do with it because there's more meat to the wood. But with a 1x2, I don't want to do that. I want to kind of keep them the same. So like this would be scaled X or Y to where it's coming on the inside of the posts. See what I'm saying? And then that way these are all, they're only getting nailed into, they're not getting wood taken out of it for a notch or anything of that nature. So yeah, I think that's probably what I would do there. On these cross braces, I'll probably just, especially if we skin it, I would screw from the sides because then you don't have anything showing on the front. So we'd screw into the side, and then the face front here, our little sheet, would cover those screws, which is another great thing that you can kind of plan ahead. Okay, where are my screws going to be? How are they going to show? You know. So yeah. So I like that. I like this a lot, actually. And we'll move the shelf up to here so that we've got this kind of cubby is what we've got here. So from this point, all we really need to do is once we decide how far we're going up, it should work out because we're 22 inches for these, for the spacing on this. So it should work out that if I take all four of these and I shift D and then grab Z22. So let's see how that works. So if we shift D, grab Z22, then that's pretty close. That's actually maybe, we need a couple inches. Yeah, so we need a couple inches. So we'll do Control Z to back these out. Now we've got this selected, so we'll grab Z, and what do we want, 24? Actually, let me add that to it. We'll grab, no, wait. Shift D on those. We'll grab Z24. And yeah, I like that. There's a gap there. It looks like we'll only be able to do 3, but that's okay. So we'll grab, oops, I didn't want to do that. Grab Z24. And, you know, maybe there's enough room there for throwing another one up top there. There might be enough room for it anyway. Let's see. I'll just slide that one up on top. It doesn't have to like slide on rails or anything. It just needs to have kind of a fence on the side. It's really all it needs. And, you know, it could be an open thing like this. I kind of like this. To where it's all open like this. But we can also kind of maybe look at doing some... Let's see, where are we? Let's see if I add... There's something weird where this keeps adding into... Where did it add to? Walls? Did that add it to walls? It did. That added it to walls, I think. Oh, actually... So we'll rotate Y90, rotate Z90. And what do we want here? 22 by 24, is that gonna work? It might work. So we want to make sure our door, when we open it, first let's object edit, select, make this line, and we'll snap the cursor to where's that? Oh, let me go with the point. Snap cursor to selected, and then we will edit object, and we will set origin to 3D cursor, and now we can RZ, so we can get a little door. So we want to make sure that if we do a door, that it isn't shifted off kilter, like if you do it like this, because then that's not going to work. So we want to make sure that it's going to fit the void or fit the deal. So I kind of like that. And then maybe just a door that, I mean, it's too high, but maybe we make it and it could actually fit. I mean, I would have to see, but I might be able to make like a, it might actually fit up against that ceiling, which is kind of nice actually. Okay, so we got 4 doors. We've got a side panel that we might want to bring up. And I suppose that's a thought too, is that this could be all open with just these things. I kind of want to cover that up and maybe have a drawer over here, like a pull-out drawer. It wouldn't be able to hold much, but it'd be able to put something under there. And then we've got the stuff on the side. So I am really liking how we're going with this. I'm really liking that. So let me turn all these off. We've got strength on the sides. We've got strength on the fronts and the back. The shear strength will be from the paneling, however we decide to do that. And I might do a full panel. I might do side panels. Might leave it open. But that's going to be whatever carving stuff I'll play around with it more and kind of come up with I might do like a lattice kind of thing. I don't know if I'll do doors yet. I may do the doors after. But we've got an idea of like what it would look like with and without doors. And the main point is to get it all up off the floor and into something that from here I could actually just add to it. And it's multi-purpose. So I've got, even if I don't want to use these things later on, I've got a shelving unit for other stuff, like a display unit or something. And then I could fill this gap in here with something or, whatever. I do think angle brackets on these 4 corners would be enough with a 1/2 inch, but we might want to get a rib across there. if we do use those for storages, because if we're not using it for storage on those shelves, so yeah, we'll probably want to do that anyway. Just because if they are being adapted for shelves, we probably want to have some strength. So it's not going to bow in the middle. So what does that do? That gives us add this to here. And, you know, I'm not even being really exact because we don't have to be exact. We're not getting a building permit. You know, nothing has to be 100% exact here because we're just getting the point across to ourselves of what we want to do. But we've got 4 1x2s at 8 feet. We've got 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 at 30 inches. 14 at 30 inches, so there's 3 per 8 foot. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 1x2s plus the 4 rail or 4 posts. So we've got 9 1x2s and so 10 1x2s is what I'll need to make this happen. And then we need 32 inches by, we could do like 6 panels in a sheet. So there's 1 sheet there. There might be another sheet. So there'd be 3 sheets of wood if we really want to go fancy with the full sides with shelves. Yeah, 3 sheets of plywood or MDF or whatever the material is. And that's the other part of it is I don't really know what I'm going to do on the material quite yet. We do know that we want 1x2s, so that's what I'm going to buy first, and then I'll build this basic shell. We've got the dimensions on where these rails will go, so it should be pretty easy. Just, you know, make a little ladder rack and slap them together with these crossbars. And then the panels. And I'm kind of liking that. So the next step for me would be go get the wood and then build this basic structure to make sure that it all fits the way we want it. And then I'll go and figure out what these voids are exactly, like between here and here and between here and here. There'd be these 4 panels. Which is going to be more like something like that. So there's going to be more like interior panels. I'm thinking would look kind of cool. Or like a lattice, you know, do some kind of where you can kind of see through it. The other thought that I actually really like is the idea of like a leaf pattern. And then I could paint it green and you know, it might look like a half living plant in the corner. Especially if you did kind of the same thing with some doors that you could still see through it, but it's not just this ugly corner of storage units. So I don't know exactly how I do that, but I think I'm leaning towards I probably will do panels like this and then, or maybe panels that are full and then do whatever carving or whatever per panel. So it'd be 1, we'd have a panel 1, 2, 3, 4 panels with whatever. It could be like a carved deer. It could be a lattice carving. It could just be a panel. But we'll figure that out later. And I don't know if I'm going to do a video on that because it's not really used that much, but maybe I will on just how I come about doing that. But it is a paid software. It's not really open source like this for people to use. So I may just do the next video where we're cutting whatever we're going to do, or maybe I do the next video where we install this, then we decide what we're going to do, and then we cut something. But this is the idea. You get the idea of what I'm doing, using Blender 3D to visualize my space, to visualize what I want to do within my space with different objects that you can pre-make, put them in your asset blender or asset browser, pull it out, and then you've got, you know, all these different things that you can just keep adding in and out. So yeah, excuse me. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. That's the rough design that we've got. That's the idea. I know I'm not the best at explaining it, but I find it to be a great tool for helping organize things, and it's worth, you know, start with 2x4s, start with things, you know, you can always do the textures and all the fancy stuff later. But it doesn't have to be fancy at all to kind of get a good idea to organize your things and kind of design ideas. So yeah, that's my crappy little storage design. Let's see how it turns out. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good day. Thanks for watching.